The first thing I did with my second chance at life was borrow 30,000 yen out of my little sister's tuition account and blow every cent of it on a video game helmet. I know. Trust me, I hear it too. But back up about 11 seconds because I had just opened my eyes in my old apartment, in my old skinny 18-year-old body, in a summer I had personally watched end the world roughly a decade from now. Same water stain on the ceiling shaped like a furious duck. Same mattress with the one spring that tried to assassinate my kidney every night. Same cracked phone buzzing with the same 3 loan apps I'd already maxed out in a life that hadn't happened yet. I was back, all the way back, before the monsters, before the collapse, before I stood in the ashes of everything I loved because I'd been too busy being a model corporate drone to notice the sky coming down. And this time I knew the exact date it started. It started with a game. Glory, launching tonight, 8 sharp. Everybody thought it was just the fanciest virtual reality toy ever built. It was not a toy. Slowly, quietly, it was going to reach out of the headset and rewrite reality itself. Monsters would step off the screen, game stats would turn into real strength, and the coins you farmed inside would convert straight into cold hard money out here. Glory wasn't a game, it was the biggest gold mine in human history, and right now I was the only person alive who knew where the veins ran. Small problem, to feel the game is real, you needed a grade A helmet, 30,000 yen. A tenth of that got you the garbage D grade, which rendered everything with all the immersion of a soggy cardboard box. And I had, let me check my accounts here. 400 and change, plus a credit score, 3 separate apps had described as concerning. So I did the math a coward does. My parents were overseas, wiring my sister her university money in one lump. My 18-year-old sister, Lee Mingley, who thought her big brother ran a successful company, because in my last life, I'd lied about that right up until the day the world took her from me and I couldn't save a single hair on her head. I called her. I asked for 30,000. I promised I'd pay it back in a week. She didn't hesitate, not for 1 second. Okay, Gege. Transfer sent. You'll find a nice girl once you're less broke, right? Yeah, love that. Nothing like your baby sister's total, unearned faith to sit in your chest like a swallowed stone. 1 week, earn it back, or she doesn't start school. I ordered the helmet. I did not sleep. 8 o'clock. I lay down, put on the most expensive object I had ever touched, and dove into the thing that was going to eat the world. A goddess was waiting for me. Wings, halo, the works, hovering in a white void, the system's welcome angel. Awaken your talent, player. Talents ran F, E, D all the way up to A, then 1 in a million, S. And above even that, a rank most players would never so much as hear whispered. SSS. Here's the part nobody else knew. A grade A helmet gives you a fat 100% luck bonus on your very first awakening roll. One shot, doubled odds, and I had spent everything to make sure it landed. A golden wheel appeared. It spun. It glowed. It stopped. Congratulations. You have awakened the SSS talent, Empty Hand. I read it 3 times. Empty Hand. Active skill. Reach out. Take the single most valuable thing your target owns. 100% success. Once a day. Passive skill. Every time you land a hit on anything, 1% chance to simply steal an item off it. No cooldown. Forever. A permanent buff labeled stealing clicked into my status bar and refused to leave. I had rolled the best thief talent in existence. And I was standing in a featureless white room with a beautiful angel who was, I couldn't help but notice, absolutely covered in the most valuable gear in the game. Now, a normal, decent, well-adjusted person looks at the being who just handed him a divine gift and feels gratitude. I looked at her and felt my fingers itch. Sorry, I said, and I wasn't. I reached out with empty hand and robbed the angel. The system chimed like it wasn't sure this was allowed either. Stolen, angel's blessing. Effect, 100 times luck for 5 minutes. 100 times. Stacked on top of my helmet's bonus, that made 200. For 300 glorious seconds, I was the single luckiest creature that had ever existed, and I knew exactly where to point it. The whole awakening menu shivered and rewrote itself. Where there'd been nothing but plain 5-star races and jobs, hidden options bloomed like the good stuff finally floating to the top. I snatched 2 before the luck ran dry. Race. Ghostly Shadow. A unique 15-star growth phantom race, master of stealth and evasion, comes with a powder that drops you into invisibility on command. Job. Shadow Walker. A unique thief class that wields 2 daggers at once for double the damage and double the speed, with a whole shelf of poisons. A stealing talent. A race built to vanish. A class built to knife things twice as fast. Every piece fit the other 2 like they'd been forged together in the dark. I hadn't gotten lucky. I'd gotten armed. The angel watched me finish. And then this cold, scripted, perfect NPC did something no NPC should be able to do. She gave me a look. Reluctant. Soulful. Aching. Like a person. Like a real girl watching someone walk away. and it landed on me and would not leave. Filed that away hard. In the endgame, some of these characters were going to wake up out here in the real world, and this one had just felt something. She gave me one last gift, a mysterious scroll, and murmured that my luck had gotten so high it had tripped a hidden storyline. The system had decided I was the world's savior. Great, no pressure. I dressed up my avatar handsome, changed my face so nobody could match me to the sad man behind the helmet, and typed in an ID borrowed from a legend, the fabled thief saint himself, Crimson Dragonstone Blade. It's a ridiculous name, I'm aware. I'd grow to love it anyway. Then I opened the scroll, and the world's most powerful main quest opened up under me like a trapdoor with treasure at the bottom. The Path to Salvation, an SSS main quest so long it basically never ended, which meant the experience and golden gear it paid out never ended either. Chapter 1, Step 1, was almost insultingly simple. Kill 100 rabbits, 100 boars, 100 wolves, and bring the proof to the village chief. Baby's first errand. I'd have hugged it if it had a neck. There was one more thing lighting up the world that first night, and every player alive could see it. The new player treasure chest. It unlocked at level 10, and its reward pool was global and shared, which is a polite way of saying the first person on the entire server to crack it open got to skim the best prize off the top, and everyone else got the leftovers. Rumors said the top prize might be a divine artifact, so a few million strangers all had the exact same thought at the exact same moment, which was, level to 10 faster than the guy next to you. Cute, I'd already met the guy next to me, he was me, and I'd done this before. They dropped me into Beginner Village 616. First thing I did there was sell every scrap of my starter gear, boots, and shirt and all, so I could afford a second plain dagger. Yes, that left me fighting in my underwear. Shadow Walker wields 2 daggers, and dual wielding with dagger mastery multiplies your damage 8-fold, and 8-fold on a naked man still beats 1 dagger on a dressed one. Fashion is for people who miss. 2 girls in matching guild cloaks watched a shirtless lunatic march into the rabbit fields and decided to be helpful. Ah, a clueless newbie. Come here, little brother. We'll carry you. One of them was already reaching to pat my head. I flicked a wrist. 4 strikes in 1 second landed on the nearest rabbit, -4, -5, -3, -6, and the thing came apart before her hand finished moving. Then I walked past both of them without a word, deeper into the grass, toward a monster spot the me of my last life had been too weak and too scared to ever touch. Behind me, somebody whispered, "That's not a newbie." No, it really wasn't. The boars taught me my engine. Every level I dumped all 15 points into agility, nothing else. And with ghostly shadows evasion layered on top, the boars simply could not hit me. I looked like a man being gored to death and the numbers all read, miss. Then Empty Hand stole a poison coating skill book off one of them, and my poison mastery grabbed it and upgraded it on the spot, white to blue, and suddenly every boar I nicked was rotting alive, losing health every single second. And here's the beautiful part, every one of those little poison ticks counted as me landing a hit, which meant every second, on every poisoned boar in the herd, my Empty Hand passive rolled its dice. Coins, hides, gear, raining out of a whole herd at once while I stood in the middle and dodged. 5 minutes of that, and I had 100 dead boars, a new level, and 67 separate stolen items I hadn't lifted a finger for. The wolves were better, because wolves are social. Touch one and the whole pack comes for you, and I wanted the whole pack. I poisoned the lead, kited the grassland into a single furious conga line of death, and lost exactly 0 health doing it. When the counter hit 500 kills, the sky lit up. Hidden title earned, Wolf Hunter, plus 6 to every stat, unique, first and only, and the kind of thing the system announces to the entire planet 3 times in a row so nobody misses it. The world lost its mind. Who was Crimson Dragonstone Blade? Nobody had heard the name. And across the sea, a certain rival server that liked to call itself the #1 esports nation in the world took one look at a Chinese player hoarding the game's first honors and started frothing on the forums. A thief. Typical. That title should be ours. I read a few of the posts and felt nothing, which is its own kind of luxury. Closer to home, 2 very rich girls were watching me on stream with a different expression entirely. The Snow Moon Guild. Twin sisters, Xiaohua the elder and president, Xiaomei the younger and vice, a top 10 guild in this whole village and desperate for a top-tier assassin. They looked at a nameless newbie soloing content and came to the only sane conclusion, this had to be some old master hiding under a fresh alias. They were half right, the master part. I hauled my proof back to the village chief and turned in step 1 of an SSS quest, and the world got its second heart attack of the night. He paid me in experience, in silver, and in 1 green gauntlet, the first piece of a set called Heritage Leather Armor. 1 of 6. A full set unlocked a guaranteed crit out of stealth and a fat bonus from behind, and it was an unbound wild drop, which in this economy meant it was worth roughly a small imported car. And the instant I turned it in, the sky screamed again. A mysterious player from China had completed the first chapter of an SSS main quest, unlocking the great epic to come, with no reward to anyone else at all. The rival server went nuclear. Why is it always China? The producer is biased. My favorite genre of comment, honestly, is the one where a stranger is furious that I exist. I bought a set of bracers, cracked 120 agility, and went looking for something bigger to steal. Bigger turned out to be bees. The quest wanted 100 poison bees, and bees taught me the one hole in my whole build because a bee's sting is magic, and you cannot dodge magic. 21 damage, right through my perfect evasion. Cool. Very cool. Love that for me. So I learned an evasion skill book, and my evasion mastery reached down and upgraded it past white, past blue, all the way to a purple legendary passive called Ghostly, and Ghostly doesn't just dodge twice, it dodges magic too. After that, I walked into 7-8 bee stings at a time and read miss, miss, miss like a lullaby. 500 dead bees later, the sky screamed my name a second time. Swarm Destroyer. Plus 10 to everything. 2 world first titles before most players had figured out which button jumps. That was the problem, actually. Not my problem. Everyone's. See, all those guilds farming village 616 for scraps had chewed the local monster spawns down to nothing, and a hungry map has a defense mechanism. The monster siege event triggered. Defend the village, or every player in it eats a 3-level penalty with no resurrection. My personal output alone had helped starve the map, so in a sense this was my fault, which is a sentence I was going to end up saying a lot. Village chat detonated, Snowmoon rallied the defense, and a whole village of panicking strangers braced for a beast tide none of them were ready for. There was exactly one person in that whole panicking mob who wasn't panicking about herself. Her name was Mei Mei. She was a support player nobody would ever group with, and the reason was almost funny once you got past how cruel it was. She was a healer with no healing skill. Everyone assumed a bug, a broken account, some poor girl who'd rolled a dud. She couldn't scratch a level 1 rabbit. She couldn't mend a paper cut, dead weight, and people said it to her face and watched her flinch and said it again. I stood a little way off and watched a dozen strangers turn her down for the defense in the space of a minute, and I thought about a thing I happen to know for a fact, which is that there are no useless classes in Glory. There are only classes nobody's cracked yet. A healer who literally cannot heal isn't broken. She's holding something so hidden even she doesn't know she's got it. So I walked over. "Sell this for me," I said, and dumped a bag of loot on her. "And add me. Crimson Dragonstone Blade." She looked at the friend request like I'd handed her the moon on a stick. She looked at me like she was waiting for the joke, the psych, the part where I laughed and walked off. It didn't come. "Stay alive through the siege," I told her. "That's the whole job." And she said, "Okay," in this tiny voice and hugged the request to her chest, and I realized I was the first person all night who hadn't sneered at her, and I filed that away too, gentler than the rest of the drawer. By wave 2, the village was bleeding out, and that's when Xiaohua Whale slammed 700,000 real yuan into the shop for 5 gold coins of emergency potions. Her little sister Xiaomei ran to buy them and found me at the counter already loading up on 50 high-grade reds and 50 blues, and she recognized me on the spot, and her eyes went wide. So I made her the offer. Right there. "Give me your 5 gold coins," I said. "I'll solo the whole siege. Your guild doesn't lift a finger, and when it's over you pay me 5 more, live on your own stream, so Snowmoon can't stiff me after." Xiaomei said yes before her brain caught up with her mouth. Xiaohua, watching through the stream, nearly threw her headset across the room. "One man against a horde? Glory is a team game," she snapped at her sister. "Our best geared tank dies to 3 of these things. You have been swindled by a pretty face and a smooth line." She was, to be fair, describing what should have been true. It just wasn't. I walked out of the city gate alone into the sunset, which I'm told looked very cool for about 3 seconds, right up until wave 3 came over the hill. Elite wild wolves, red names, 450 health apiece, 25 attack, a whole grassland of them, and the entire stream inhaled. Then they watched me charge hundreds of elites, poison the front rank, and immediately turn around and sprint away from the pack shrieking, and the chat came apart laughing. "Cool for 3 seconds, our hero, 3-second wonder." At the crowd's edge, up on her toes so she could see over the taller players, one small voice that nobody else was making called out, "Keep it up, big brother." That was Mei Mei. She was the only person in the village betting on me, and she was betting with a whisper. Xiaohua wasn't laughing though. She was the one person watching close enough to see the thing that mattered. I was standing inside a wall of elite wolves, and I was not dying. A night lasts 2 seconds in there. I'd been in it for 10, then 15, taking hits that all read miss, and something behind her eyes went very still. "His skill," she said slowly, to nobody, "is actually top-notch." Then, because she's a president before she's a person, she messaged me to drag the pack back toward the village walls so everyone could share the kill points and the event score. I ran the other way. "I poisoned these for 20 minutes, I typed back. "And now you want the points?" Lie down and wait your turn, whispering Willow Sky. I used her guild handle on purpose in front of her own stream because a proud woman who's just been publicly told to sit and wait is a proud woman who does something stupid on camera. She did exactly the stupid thing. She renamed the stream One Man versus an Elite Wolf Pack, swung the guild camera around to point straight at me, and gifted 50,000 yuan to boost it into the trending list, personally paying to summon a few million strangers to come and watch me fail. Right about then, my poison finished cooking. The wolves came apart all at once, whole rows folding like wheat under a scythe, the DOT ticking every one of them down in the same breath, and the siege scoreboard, where Xiaohua had been sitting so comfortably at number 1 with 221 points, started to move. My number climbed, 14, 21, 35, 90, 190, straight past her into first place, live. On the stream she'd paid millions of strangers to watch. The chat stopped laughing so fast you could hear the silence. Xiaohua stopped looking at the board entirely. She just stared out across a field of dead elites at the man she had hired to lose, the man her sister had bought for 10 gold coins and a promise, and she said it very quietly, to no one at all. I misjudged him. The siege broke. The village stood in absolute silence over a carpet of dead elites. Every player in 616 got a free level, even the dead ones. The reward draws went out, and my first place chest cracked open into a legendary purple, an ink bamboo bracelet, 20% move speed, and, more importantly, a double jump. A thief who can jump twice in the air is a thief you have already lost. And the elite wolves, being an event, dropped nothing at all except that Empty Hand had quietly lifted a full backpack of gear off them while I worked. I was level 9 now. The number 2 player on the planet was level 8, and a very rich, very rattled young woman still owed me 5 gold coins, on stream, in front of the world. She paid. All of it. 1.4 million yuan, no welching, and then she asked to add me as a friend, so I told her the friend slot was extra, 100,000. Through me, I explained, you're not making a friend, you're hiring a specialist. Dungeons, world bosses, guild wars, the occasional assassination, 100,000 is the floor. Her stream screamed robbery. She paid that too. My bank account went from 372 yuan to 1.5 million, and I said pleasure doing business and logged off because it was almost dawn and there was somebody out here I actually cared about. I took my sister to the mall. I transferred her 100,030 to pay back the loan and 70 just because, and Li Mingli immediately panicked and asked if I'd done something illegal. She refused to spend a cent on herself and started saving it for the family and nagged me, again, to please find a nice girl. I couldn't tell her that money was already halfway to worthless, that in a few short years none of this would matter, that the only reason I hoarded any of it was to build a wall high enough that this time the world couldn't get to her. So I just quietly bought the dresses she'd been staring at and had them delivered. She hand-washed them that night like they were made of spun glass. In my last life, I failed her completely. This time, I was going to be obscene about it. Meanwhile, a man had noticed me. His name was Emperor of Stars, leader of the Sovereign Guild, Snow Moon's oldest rival, and instead of insulting me, he did something smarter. He wrote a calm, surgical forum post. Paying one man 100,000, he said, betrays the brotherhood of a guild. Xiaohua is short-sighted. Rewarding a mercenary over your own members at the founding stage will rot your morale from the inside. And it worked. You could feel Snow Moon's confidence crack. It was, I had to admit, a genuinely clever knife, slid in with a smile, and I filed the man's name where I keep the names I intend to collect on. He wanted to make me look like poison. Xiaohua decided to answer him not with words but with facts, which is how I ended up with a job. But first, the game handed me a weapon I didn't have to steal. The developers invited me to verify as a certified pro, top thief of the entire China server, gold ID, and a privilege I cared about far more than the badge, a pinned forum post, once a week, that nobody could bury. I used it in about 4 minutes. I posted a 72-hour, no-reserve auction of all the gear Empty Hand had been quietly stealing off everything I touched, and let the whales bid each other into the stratosphere over my garbage. Then I turned in the next step of the SSS quest, collected another piece of heritage armor, and hit the wall every player hits at level 9, where the game politely informs you that you cannot advance another inch without a monster encyclopedia and a level 5 main city. Fine. I had somewhere to be anyway. Xiaohua's father, it turned out, had connections, and those connections had turned up a secret bonus dungeon nobody else on the server knew existed. She hired me to clear it. I quoted her like a robber, because I am one. 100,000 just to show up, another 100 per boss, 200 for the full clear, and I keep every piece of thief gear that drops. Her elite members seethed. She gritted her teeth and paid the deposit sight unseen. And the second we stepped through the portal, the sky announced to the entire planet that Snow Moon had unlocked an S-rank hidden dungeon, and then added the part Xiaohua hadn't read the fine print on. Only the first clear was exclusive. After our run, the place opened to the world, which meant if we failed, we'd fail live, in front of everyone. An Emperor of Stars would be watching with popcorn. He was, in fact, watching. The first monster was a single elite skeleton with 750 health, and it hit Snow Moon's best geared tank, a fully twinked Dragon Knight, for -47 like it was flicking a bug. Their strongest mage, Xiaohua herself, hit it back with her best fireball for -42. Despair rippled through the party. On his stream, Emperor of Stars laughed. Even their top mage does 40. Watch that greedy thief do single digits. This is what Snow Moon's unfairness bought them. Then I hit the skeleton. 94, 82, 96, 104. Because my damage doesn't come off my weak little dagger, it comes off my agility, which was 10 times a normal player's, and the skeleton came apart like wet paper, while the whole party pulled 2% experience off a single trash mob. Emperor of Stars stopped laughing. Impossible, he typed. That's absolutely impossible. Xiaohua, breathing a little hard, told me I could name any price. I doubled it, deadpan, and told her I should have tripled it. The dungeon tried to be clever after that. A lone skeleton sat in a room like bait, and when the tank stepped up, the floor cracked open and 8 more erupted out. The Dragon Knight taunted them all onto himself to save the squishies and got deleted in 3 hits. Xiaohua called the wipe, apologized, and reached to abort, which would have thrown the whole dungeon open to the world a run early, which would have handed Emperor of Stars the first clear. I said, wait, and walked into the middle of the 8 skeletons unarmored and stood perfectly still. Everyone jeered, show off gets what he deserves. Every skeleton attack read, miss. Agility dodges even in a corridor. I spun poison across all 8 and killed the entire pack bare-handed, and paused mid-slaughter to loot a bracer, and when they offered it to me free, I insisted on rolling for it anyway by the rules, because I take what's mine and not 1 copper more. Snow Moon's contempt curdled into something closer to fear. I rolled a 3, won it clean, and told them it was going in my auction. Then I walked to the boss door alone. The first boss was where the game stopped being a chore and started being the reason I used to love this. Cataclysmic Hound, a green boss the size of a small elephant, a zombie dog stitched together out of the wrong parts, 5,500 health and 85 attack, and, crucially, it was smart. It had a wide enough awareness that my auto-dodge, the thing that had trivialized every fight all night, simply stopped working. It lowered that ruined skull and headbutted me and took 158 off in a single hit, 70% of my whole bar, and I heard Xiaomei gasp over comms. For the first time all night when Xiaohua said retreat, it wasn't cowardice, it was arithmetic. 1 more hit like that, and I was a stain. Watch my health, I told Xiaomei. Don't heal unless I hit 20%. And I didn't retreat, because somewhere under the Reborn man running spreadsheets on the end of the world, there was still a kid who used to love games more than anything, and that kid had been asleep for 10 years, and he'd just woken up, and I'm not going to lie to you, my blood was singing. You don't outstat a smart boss. You can't. You outread it. Its big attacks came in 2-part combos, a fake stumble that baits your dodge into a real lunge, and the thing about choreography is that once you've seen the steps, it's just a dance. Fake fall. I held. It lunged. I rolled under it. It reared, and I double jumped off the bridge of its nose, and I put both daggers into its eyes, the one weak point eagle reading told me would crit. 220, 286, 267, 301. Poison stacking green under all of it, ticking, ticking. On the stream they'd spent the whole run calling me a coward cheesing with poison from range. Now they watched me stand toe-to-toe with a boss that could 2-shot me and win the exchange on pure timing, and the chat went quiet. That specific quiet a room gets when the thing it was mocking turns out to be the most dangerous thing in it. 3 minutes. The hound's legs went out and it came down like a dropped building. It dropped 3 green pieces and 2 blue daggers, and the daggers stopped my heart for a second. Cataclysm Fang, left and right, a matched pair, and the passive only fires if both blades hit the same target. 50% armor penetration, which is worthless to a normal thief who wields exactly 1 dagger. So on the open market, this pair is a curiosity nobody wants. To a Shadow Walker who wields 2, it's a weapon forged in a dream and left under my pillow. Xiaohua handed them over per the contract, watching me pick them up the way you watch a knife balanced on the edge of a table, already doing the math on how much she'd regret this. I couldn't even equip them yet, they wanted level 10. I filed them next to the fact that Empty Hand was almost off cooldown, and I decided quietly that whatever the final boss of this place was carrying, it was about to be mine. The final boss did not care what I decided. Shadow of Calamity, a blue boss, a living slime of black oil, and its level was 14. 4 over me. Its name glowed red, and red is Glory's way of writing a single word across a monster's forehead: suppression. You cannot reliably hit this. Talent, gear, reflexes, none of it matters. The game has decided the gap is too wide, and your attacks will simply refuse to land. I threw one test dagger and watched it read, miss on a stationary target the size of a car. Then I turned around and walked out. No hesitation, no speech, the first clean give up of the whole night. And here's the thing, not one of the people who'd spent an hour praying I'd humiliate myself said a single word, because everybody who plays this game knows a level 14 blue boss is a wall, and a wall does not care how good you are. The stream started draining away by the thousands. Snow Moon's run is over. Cool thief, shame about the ceiling. On his own channel, Emperor of Stars finally exhaled and started to smile. There it is, he told his guild. The greedy little mercenary walks the moment it gets hard. This is what Xiaohua paid 2 million for. Screenshot it. Then I turned back around, at the boss door, and said, I have a way. It'll cost you. The way was theft wearing generosity's coat. I already had the experience banked to hit level 10. All that stood between me, and it was the encyclopedia wall at level 9, which needs monster cards to break, and those cards cost a fortune. So I had Xiaohua pay to unlock mine, and then since I was already there, I upsold her on funding the whole card set, levels 1 through 9, 450,000 yuan, and I neglected to mention I'd quietly bought the single most expensive card in that set myself an hour ago, which meant 90,000 of her 450 went straight into my pocket on the way through. Somewhere north of 2 million bled out of Snow Moon in one night, and Xiaohua had stopped flinching when I named a number, which is its own quiet kind of surrender. I hit level 10 live, on stream, which face-slapped the 20-odd players who'd ground all night to reach 9 specifically to catch up to that thief, and it also popped the new player treasure chest, the global one. First open takes the best. The whole planet had spent a full day racing each other to it, and I strolled through the door without trying, because the door had always been waiting for me. Out came a purple ring, 5 to all stats, and a skill called Blink, a short teleport on a 5-second cooldown. The sky screamed my name a 4th time, and I like to picture a few thousand very rich players who'd skipped sleep to grind reading that announcement and quietly introducing their fists to their very expensive desks. Then I put my toys on. Blink Ring, both Cataclysm Fangs, Attack 84, Agility 192, and I walked back into the room I'd just fled. Only now the boss's name was yellow, suppression gone, 10,500 health, doubled, and it did not matter even slightly. 4-hit combo, 301, 322, 296, 311, both blades landing on the same target, armor pen live. The slime reared to spike me, and I didn't predict it this time, I just reacted, blinked clean through the attack to its back on raw reflex and opened it up from behind. 604, 626, 593, 682. Roughly a quarter of the boss's health every second, 4 clean windows, one very calm hunter who'd already killed this thing 100 times in his head before he ever swung, dead in a minute flat. Empty hand lifted a purple item off it on the way past, because of course it did. On his channel, Emperor of Stars had stopped talking entirely. Xiaohua was frightened of me now, and she was right to be, because I'd told her to her face I'd turn on her the second the price was right. She decided the only safe version of me was a version that belonged to Snow Moon, and she set out to buy me at any cost, and she was going to spend a long time learning that some things don't have a price you can afford. The boss dropped a robe of holy light, purple, and the sisters went to war over it. Xiaohua steamrolled little Xiaomei up and up, 1.2, 1.4, 1.5 million, until Xiaomei folded in a sulk. Then I rolled for it too. Per the contract, non-thief gear goes to a public roll, and I won it clean at 90. Xiaohua's face did a complicated thing. And then, once the drop was mine and their whole savage bidding war was settled and paid, I reached into my bag and produced a second identical robe of holy light. The one empty hand had stolen off the boss's corpse, and I sold it to Xiaomei for 1.5 million as well. So the sisters' entire vicious bidding war had been over nothing. There were always 2 robes. I sold them both. Xiaohua stared at me for a long moment and finally managed in a very small voice, "What a shrewd businessman." The dungeon cleared out to about 5 million yuan in my pocket. 2 days into my second life, my bank account had grown a comma I had never seen before in either life, and I still hadn't reached the part of this game where it stops being funny and starts trying to kill me for real. I had one investment nobody understood, and her name was Mei Mei, the healer who couldn't heal. I'd been power leveling her on the side, and at level 3 she suddenly gained a skill with no skill book at all, which does not happen. A buff called Dragon Descendants Holy Word, 10% damage and 10% max health to whoever she blessed. Double what a level 10 priest's version gives. And dragon themed. She fretted, near tears, that she still couldn't heal anyone, and I patted her head and told her the truth. Her skill was incredible, she just had a class the game hadn't shown her yet. "Stay with me," I said, "and I'll carry you through everything." She looked at me like a stray that had decided against all evidence to trust a hand. I suspected right then that she was reborn like me. I dismissed it. I was wrong to dismiss it, but that's later. I climbed a cliff most people couldn't reach and talked a hermit into teaching me alchemy because potions are a bottomless market and because I refused to depend on anyone's supply line but mine, and I set Mei Mei to gathering herbs. Then I found out why she gathered so fast and so desperately, and it stopped being cute. She has a leg that doesn't work. In the real world, she can't walk. She'd saved online part-time money for years just to afford a cheap helmet, because inside Glory, she can run. Her parents hit her and called it a waste. I wired her $10,000 and framed it as a finder's fee so her family couldn't smell a gift and take it. She's not comic relief. She's a kid I'm actually going to get out. The alchemy turned into a monopoly the way water turns into ice, quietly and then all at once, and then that's just how the world is now. I was the only person alive who could outcraft the system's own shop, which meant I wasn't competing with other alchemists, I was competing with the game and winning. I refined a mountain of Mei Mei's herbs into thousands of potions and sold the whole batch to Snowmoon for 40,000 on one condition, that Xiaohua personally power level Mei Mei for me. Xiaohua agreed, and then watched me fuss over Mei Mei for a while, adjusting her gear, checking her levels, and got a look on her face that she would have denied to her grave, a look that was, if you squint, faintly and inexplicably annoyed. I filed that away too. I file everything. Then I went to Qingfeng City, a level 5 main city, to change jobs, and the thief mentor turned out to be a hooded woman with deep purple eyes, described by the game itself as the most outstanding adventurer to come through in years. And she felt wrong in the exact way the angel had felt wrong, a person wearing an NPC like a coat, something real and asleep behind the scripted eyes. I logged the face without a word and took her quest. She sharpened my whole kit into something with teeth. She mutated my stealth into shadow, which doesn't just hide me, it leaves a decoy of the me from 1 second ago standing exactly where I was, a lie you can stab people with. And she turned my old backstab into Blade Storm, a spinning area sweep that pairs with my poison like they were engaged. Meanwhile, the SSS quest kept quietly feeding me heritage armor, 4 of 6 pieces now, the crit damage climbing every time, the set inching toward whatever it was going to become when it was whole. I one-shot the local monsters now. Crit 635 on a level 11 man-eating plant, which is roughly like using a howitzer on a dandelion. The knife's edge tension of the newbie village was gone, replaced by the specific stupid joy of deleting things faster than they can render. And that, of course, is exactly when the game sent me the best headache of my second life. Somebody stole a quest item out of my chest. She did it mid-fight, from full stealth, clean as a surgeon, which told me 2 things. She was a real thief, and she thought she'd gotten away with it. So I turned around and blinked, not to where she was, but to the patch of empty air where a good thief would land, because I don't get lucky, I read people. She reappeared directly onto my daggers. One shot. A green boot popped off her corpse. She did not take this well. She revived, dusted herself off, sprinkled detection powder, and came back for round 2. So I did the responsible thing and destroyed her boots, which meant that from that point forward, this master assassin had to conduct all further assassination attempts barefoot across terrain that Glory renders down to the individual pebble, and it turns out her souls are ticklish. She'd creep up behind me, all murderous focus, step on a sharp rock, and giggle and blow the whole ambush. Every time she lunged, I one-shot her. Every time I one-shot her, another green piece of her gear fell off. Boot, glove, chest piece, until this proud, snarling, world-class killer was standing in the grass in system default underwear, having personally hand-delivered me her entire wardrobe, one failed murder at a time, like the world's angriest courier. Her ID, and I need you to really sit in this with me, was Night Shadow, Serpent's Embrace. She would not answer to a single syllable less than the whole thing. That's not a name, I told her. That's a light novel. She hissed at me and deployed her secret weapon, a rare footwork skill, a flashy little sidestep meant to make her landing impossible to predict. I watched it once, predicted exactly where she'd come down, and punched her in the face with a fist I'd coated in poison. When I asked her how many pieces of gear she had left, she stopped, deadly serious, and counted on her toes, and got it wrong, twice. And I stood there in the grass, and I realized I was genuinely, helplessly delighted for the first time in either life. Because this snarling, barefoot, arithmetic challenge disaster was a top-tier thief, second maybe only to me, and I had never once heard of her. Not in a single memory of my entire past life. A player this good should have been legendary, and she wasn't, anywhere, ever. Somewhere in the act of being reborn, I'd shuffled the deck of the whole world, and it had dealt in people who never got the chance to exist the first time around. New souls in an old game. It made me feel, briefly, less alone. I decided to call her the Empress, mostly because she'd have hated anything shorter. The Queen had a business proposition. Once she ran out of daggers. Her rare talent, A-level treasure hunting, had sniffed out a genuine super treasure, and it was sitting behind a puzzle she couldn't crack. A chessboard. I need you to understand what that meant, because in my last life, this exact puzzle was the 7th great unsolved mystery of glory. 2 years, every chess master on Earth, every AI anyone could throw at it, all of them lost because the board didn't run on chess rules, it ran on Glory's own private logic and Glory's own private supercomputer, and it did not lose. So I told the Empress I gave up. She was so insulted she dumped the coordinates on the public forum out of pure spite to prove anyone could do what I wouldn't, and in doing so she said the location out loud, the Lada Gang Mountains. And that one word cracked it open for me, because there were 2 of these boards in Glory, and the one that ate the world's grandmasters in my last life was at the other mountain. This was the twin. And I knew the twin's answer. You don't play the board, you can't. It's smarter than you, and it never gets tired, so you don't play it. You start both boards at once, and you make them play each other. Your spear against your own shield, the unbeatable machine drowned in a mirror of itself. The whole world got to watch itself fail first, which was the best part. When the Empress's spite post went up, the board's blue light offered a copy to anyone who wanted to try, and everyone tried, and everyone wiped. Xiaohua, no fool, lasted 15 moves before the board strangled her. A pair of famous university students went further, one of them to 16. And then a cold, brilliant girl named Lan Lan sat down and pushed all the way to move 32. Where the difficulty visibly shifted gears like the board had only been warming up. Lan Lan did the sensible thing and hired the #1 chess grandmaster in the country. He cruised past her, and then he hit a single move and stopped and thought about it for an actual hour, one move, sweat on his brow, before he stood up and walked away from the board muttering that it was beyond human control. The students countered by hiring a top-tier AI and training it overnight on nothing but this. The AI sailed clean past the spot where the Grandmaster had died, all the way to move 72, humming along, and then it simply froze. There was no move, no legal line survived. The AI, the actual machine, lost. Even the AI can't win, said a planet that had run entirely out of ideas. Meanwhile, on a mountain nobody was watching. I had Mei Mei quietly operating my board from a distance. I wanted a face on this that wasn't mine, and I also knew something about her by now. That socially terrified girl who flinches at strangers turns into a lioness the instant she's defending the master's honor. So I fed my board's moves to her board, and her board's moves back to mine, live, 2 impossible machines pointed at each other's throats. The crowd found her stream and jeered the opening for about 4 moves, random, attention-seeking, who is this nobody? Then they watched 2 engines that had each personally beaten grandmasters spend 100 moves methodically dismantling one another, past 32, past the grandmaster's grave at move 60, past the AI's grave at 72, past 90, and the board that had stood unbeaten against every mind and machine on Earth for 2 straight years quietly lit up green. Solved. Mei Mei made a tiny disbelieving squeak into the mic that a few million strangers heard, and then went scarlet, and I have never been prouder of anyone. My board paid out a whetstone carving knife, an orange epic that lets you transplant a special ability off one item onto another once a week, which quietly fixed the one flaw in my entire build forever. I could keep my double jump and my blink and stop being punished for their weak base stats. The Queen's board paid a training forge, orange, a passive that skims 30% of every slain monster's essence into stored experience, which is just a permanent 30% bonus to everything I'd ever kill again. By then, my 72-hour auction closed. 3,206,000 yuan for what was frankly a pile of garbage gear, because nobody was buying the gear, they were buying a friend slot next to the top thief on the server. I added the whales, my future marks, and I made exactly one pointed exception. Emperor of Stars had paid to send me a friend request. I ignored it and kept his money. Consider it, I told the Void, compensation for the trash talk. I was starting to enjoy the specific weight of a grudge, held patiently, right up until it's heavy enough to drop. There was a dungeon on the bounty board called Poison Marsh Dark Swamp, a 15 to 20 zone that had already eaten several guilds whole, and I took exactly one person into it, Mei Mei, because I wasn't there to clear it. I was there to rob the level 25 boss of its single best drop and leave. An empty hand was itching. The whole world tuned in to watch a level 10 and a healer who can't heal walk into a suicide dungeon holding hands. Inside, past a soldier's camp with dying embers, we reached the boss. I knew that camp from last life. The soldiers slumped around those fires aren't soldiers, they're swarms of insects wearing the shape of men, and they wait for you to walk in and say hello. I walked a wide, polite circle around them instead, and Mei Mei padded along in my shadow, wide-eyed, holding the hem of my whole plan in both hands. The boss was a human-faced demon spider, level 25, 15 levels over me, squatting in the center of a web that reads every vibration in the room. You cannot sneak up on it the normal way, because the web feels you coming before you've decided to move. Except Mei Mei's dragon buff tripled my shadow, stretched my decoy from 1 second to a full 3, and turned me down to a smear of nearly nothing. And that is how a level 10 walks up the throat of a level 25, and it never twitches. The queen fed me the real intel from outside the instance, in real time, for her cut. The prize isn't the boss's egg everyone assumes it is. It's buried under the spider eggs, behind it. So I got in behind the thing, and I dug. That's when the web finally felt me. The boss came around enraged, and a single swipe knocked me off my feet and up into the air, and it cornered me there, weightless, 1 heartbeat from a death I couldn't dodge. And it was in that exact frozen half-second, dangling over the end, that I finally looked down at the rock I'd been standing on to reach the loot, and understood it wasn't a rock at all. It was a dragon egg. Petrified, ancient, the size of a house, and Mei Mei's dragon buff was bleeding off my body toward it in fine golden threads, reaching for it, because the dragon in her blood knew its own kind, even through 1,000 years of stone. Then the spider killed me, my first death of either life, minus 50% experience, straight back down to level 9, worth every point. I respawned, sent Mei Mei safely out of the instance, and slipped back in alone through the chaos I'd left behind, and I reached out and put empty hand on the egg. It was too weathered to take whole, the shell just crumbling static. But something inside it was not. Stolen. Dragon essence. The surviving soul of a crippled dragon. A thing that had kept one single ember alive inside a fossil for longer than the kingdom of Ixtal had been dust, and it bound itself to me with a note that read only, "Nurture it." Unexpected surprise. I closed my hand around a sleeping god the size of a marble and ran for the door while the boss's rage spread out behind me across the whole swamp like ink spilled into water. That ink drowned the whole dungeon. Every guild team farming Poison Marsh got wiped by the berserk, monsters buffed 50%, everyone's experience gutted, and once again the guild leaders did the forensics and arrived at the same 3-word conclusion, which was, it was him. My name in the chat shut the mockery off like a tap. Mei Mei, in her fierce little way, defended the master to a crowd of grumbling veterans twice her level. I set myself 3 goals, low and quiet under all the noise, catch up in levels, hold the alchemy monopoly, push the SSS quest, and I noticed Mei Mei had dropped her herb price to 1/10 of what I'd been paying her because she'd finally done the math and realized I'd been overpaying her 5-fold out of pity, the way somebody overpays a person they can see as drowning. In my last life, I was the drowning one, picking herbs for 5 copper a day, so I let her keep the new price, and I didn't say why. The SSS quest sent me next to Scarlet Monastery, a white church the game had stained the color of a fresh wound, and it worked on a simple rule. Kill enough here, and a boss spawns. The Sovereign Guild had booked the whole place, Emperor of Stars' guild. Which meant the casuals were left scraping the outer edges for nothing while the rich guild farmed the spawn, and I do love a coincidence that saves me the trouble of finding a man. I joined a casual team, hood up, 1 dagger, doing my very best impression of a useless level 9 tag-along. 2 of them mattered. Chiang Jun, a knight, one of those steady, decent men that small guilds respect on sight without being told to, whose ID was husband of 5 minutes, which is a whole biography in 6 words, and a warrior girl, wheat-skinned and permanently furious, swinging a greatsword bigger than she was, who went by Iron Blade Hidden Dawn. She took one look at my level and decided I was luggage she'd been assigned to protect. When a stray axe came at my head, she split it in half over me without breaking stride and barked at me to stay behind the adults. I liked her immediately. I was absolutely not going to tell her that. I'll call her Sister Wu. Then the boss spawned, and Sovereign showed the casuals exactly where they ranked. Their ace hunter, a player called Gao Jian, put an arrow through Chiang Jun's tank to snipe the kill out from under a team that had done all the work. And then Emperor of Stars himself strolled over, unhurried, king of his little hill, and stomped Sister Wu flat into the dirt, and told the casuals they had 3 breaths to leave or be deleted. Chiang Jun's jaw was working. Sister Wu was face down in the mud, shaking, not with fear, with rage. And I leaned over, hood still up, and tapped Chiang Jun on the shoulder and asked him the only question that has ever mattered. "Do you want this, boss?" He turned. I dropped the hood and drew both daggers, and a nearby player made a small choking sound because 2 daggers in glory means exactly 1 man. I gave Emperor of Stars a choice. Generous, I thought. Let the girl up and walk away, or die here. Pick fast. He picked wrong. He sent everything at once. Gao Jian put 5 arrows in me, and the game printed, miss, 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 miss in a neat little column. King's big heavy strike came down like a dropped anvil, a named skill, unmissable by design, and it missed too because Ghostly Shadow Evasion doesn't care about your categories. It doesn't dodge attacks or spells or skills. It dodges the concept of being hit. I blinked to Sister Wu, grabbed her, and threw her clear of the whole mess, and mid-flight, bleeding out and furious, she reached up and squeezed her own arm where I'd grabbed her and cackled, "Good arm strength, I like you," which is, I promise, a thing that came out of her mouth in the middle of a battle. And while I was in there, Empty Hand quietly lifted a bow straight off a live player's back, and I felt the future click one notch forward, because if I can steal from monsters, I can steal from people, and people carry so much better gear than monsters do. Killing Sovereign turned my name red, a sinner's brand floating over my head, and King answered the only way a man like that knows how, with numbers. He zerged me and slid 8 stealth thieves in behind the swarm to gank the ganker, so I left a shadow decoy, a perfect copy of the me from 1 second ago, standing exactly where they expected me, and let all 8 of them dump their entire opening burst into a ghost. Then I killed them, except not quite. I only poisoned the 8 and let them live, screaming, bleeding out in slow motion, and that forced 21 sovereign healers to drop everything and burn every holy light they owned just to keep their own assassins breathing. And the instant all 21 of those healers were staring at empty cooldowns, with nothing left to cast, I called the charge. The casuals came off the wall howling. One blade storm swept the middle. Sovereign, the top 10 guild that had spent an hour treating everyone here like dirt, simply came apart. Sister Wu climbed up out of the mud, walked over to Emperor of Stars, and personally stomped him flat into the exact spot he'd stomped her, and stood on him, and demanded to know why he kept calling her dad. His whole elite dropped a level from the losses and fled for Qingfeng City. Emperor of Stars last of all, backing away into the trees with a look I recognized, the look of a man filing a grudge. Good. That's twice I'd taken something from him now. He was going to want a third try. I was counting on it. I didn't want Snow Moon. I wanted my own. So I founded a guild on the spot, with Chang Jun as my right hand and Sister Wu for the wet work, and the casuals nobody else had wanted, and my name alone was enough to raise it without the usual rally, which normally takes a mountain of players and a lot of begging. I called it 9 heavens. I made myself a hands-off boss and dumped every logistics headache on Chang Jun, who accepted the burden like a man relieved to finally have one. Then I finished the last step of the Scarlet Monastery quest, and the game stopped being fun for a minute. There was a priest, gentle, golden-haired, warm eyes, the softest-looking NPC you ever saw. He also had over 2 million health. I know because the basement's blood sacrifice mechanic chunked him for 20-30,000 a tick, and he didn't so much as blink. When I opened the sealed basement, the world flickered, and for one instant, the White Church became a cathedral built of bones, and something underneath it was so wrong the game wouldn't render it. Just let me feel it. The priest's body convulsed, folded, endured something no living thing should survive, and stayed standing, still smiling. I stole the basement key twice, once with my hand and once through the blood sacrifice damage, and I asked him what was down there. "All is the Lord's will," he said, and handed me a sealed letter for the kingdom's guard captain, reporting that everything at Scarlet Monastery was perfectly normal, which was a lie. I could see it was a lie. I put it in my bag next to the growing pile of things that were going to matter far more than gold, because this, right here, was the first cold draft of the apocalypse leaking in through a crack in the game, and I was the only man alive who could feel the wind. Out in the real world, my sister had gotten hooked on glory, so I took her and her 2 friends to a restaurant so exclusive it charged nearly 9,000 a head. One friend was sweet and clueless. The other was a girl who liked to needle my sister about dating a rich man. And when my sister pushed back, this girl doubled down and announced to the whole table that she personally was the secret girlfriend of the famous Crimson Dragonstone Blade. Held hands, hugged, kissed, the works. She said all of this directly across the table from me, because she had no idea the sad rich man buying her lunch and the legend she was lying about were the same person. I said nothing. I just smiled and let the trap set itself, because some payoffs are worth aging in the barrel. I also learned my sister had an A-level talent of her own, a skill that spins off a clone of her, one everyone wrote off as useless because it wastes potions. No talent is useless. I'd learned that from Mei Mei. I wired my sister another 100,000 and started planning what her clone could do that no living player could risk, because I had a real map to build toward. There's a stretch of lakeside land near a place called Qingshan, and in my last life, a nobody rode the terrain there to warlord status. Because when glory finally bled into reality, a lost elite human army spawned in exactly that spot for whoever was standing on it, so I decided to own it. Money isn't the goal, money is the shovel. Meanwhile, my dragon essence stirred and bonded itself to my ox horse mount, sensing the faint dragon blood in its veins, and the two struck a deal. The essence heals off the horse runs faster and hits harder. Symbiosis. Not the last time that little parasite would turn out to be the most valuable thing I owned. Then Emperor of Stars came for his 3rd try, and this time he brought the world with him. It started as an escort job, a long haul between two cities, and the coordinates leaked, which meant every bounty hunter on the server turned up hoping for a piece. Most of them took one look at my ID and scattered, because at this point my name had become a kind of weather system and you don't go out in it. Snowmoon sent Xiaomei and Mei along to bank a favor and split the pay. Easy money. And that's exactly when Emperor of Stars made his move, and he made it big. He broadcast my red name bounty to the entire server. Kill Crimson Dragonstone Blade, and the system will strip every piece of gear off his corpse for you. 2 purple, 2 blue, a full green set, a fortune in 1 kill. Hundreds swarmed out of the trees at the smell of it. I blade stormed the greedy off me like a man wading through tall grass, unbothered, because a mob is just a crowd that hasn't learned to be afraid yet. But the mob was the faint. King's real play cost him a fortune. A point teleport scroll, an obscene one-shot item, and he used it to reach across the whole map, pluck me out of the open, and drop me into the dead center of a 200-man ambush he'd pre-staged in a canyon, with my blink deliberately locked out by the terrain. Very clever, genuinely. I kited, I potioned, I carved lanes through them, and the honest truth of it is that those 200 people were far more frightened of me than I was of them, and it showed in how they died. Then King burned a second scroll, and this one wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at Xiaomei. Drop the president's little sister into the meat grinder, kill a snowmoon heir on my watch, break the alliance and my reputation in one stroke, and in the half-second before it fired, before anyone else had even parsed what was happening, Mei threw herself sideways and shoved Xiaomei clear and took the teleport in her place, not with fear on her face, with hope. Because the scroll's other end was me, and standing next to me in a canyon full of 200 killers was the single place in all of glory this girl most wanted to be. She landed in the middle of the slaughter, the healer who can't heal, this person the entire server had spent weeks calling worthless, and she planted her feet and cast her dragon light on me and said in that small, steady voice, "Sir, wait, I'm coming to help." Her one dragon light took me from 30% to 80. One cast, half my health bar, from a girl the whole server had written off as broken, and then she died, level 1, in a sea of strangers, because she'd spent everything she had to reach me. I want to be clear about what happened to my mood at that moment. It got very quiet and very cold, and somewhere behind my eyes, I stopped planning to survive Emperor of Stars and started planning to erase his entire guild. She respawned having lost 3,000 yuan of gathering materials and immediately fretted about paying it back, and I told her no, and took her staff and used the whetstone carving knife to move the dragon seal onto it. A dragon's roar tore out of the weapon. Mei went still, wrapped in threads of dragon light, resonating with the essence I carried, becoming something even she didn't have a name for yet. That's when the cavalry came over the hill, and then the cavalry's problem came over the hill behind it. Sister Wu crashed in at the head of 159 Heavens members because Chang Jun had logged off just long enough to physically wake the entire guild up and drag them online. Snowmoon rolled in behind her. Dong Haishi's people rolled in behind them. 3 guilds converging to crush Sovereign for good, and it should have been over. Except Emperor of Stars just kept backing away, stalling, checking a timer only he could see. And I should have read the tell, because a man who's losing and still smiling is a man waiting for something. Emperor of Stars hadn't hired mercenaries, he'd committed treason. He had opened a cross-server portal and paid the top players and 3 whole elite guilds of a rival foreign server to come through it, not to help him win a guild war, to strip me, specifically me, because if a foreign player lands the killing blow, my 2 purple and 2 blue pieces don't just drop, they change hands across the border, and my gear flips on the global rankings from under China's flag to under theirs, a national trophy handed to an enemy server. And while they were at it, they'd gut every top Chinese guild in one night, since he'd so thoughtfully gathered them all in one canyon for the occasion. Even Dong Haishi, the single gentlest, most conflict-shy man on the entire server, went white to the lips, because there is ordinary ambition, the kind everyone here has, and then there is selling your own people to outsiders to settle a personal grudge, and those are not the same country. Then the sky came down, a purple blizzard, an area spell 3 tiers above anything we could answer, bloomed over all of us at once, and an arrow storm followed it in, and the Chinese side folded like wet paper in a fist. It wasn't even close, because this foreign server's level 6 city had handed them a perfectly scaled gear dungeon on a plate, and they'd farmed it, and every one of them was wearing a full endgame set, while my strongest allies were still fighting in scraps and hand-me-downs. We weren't outplayed, we were out-equipped, on our own soil, by invitation, and the man who'd sent the invitation was standing at the back, watching, waiting to collect my armor off my corpse. Their ace, a player called Fei Long, boxed me alone into a blood-red magic scroll prison, 1 against 10, no help in, no help out, a private little arena built just to take me apart. I killed one of them with a shadow decoy in the first few seconds, let him spend his whole burst on a ghost. Then they cracked the tell and started predicting the decoy, and my best trick stopped working, so I got clever a different way. Their mage had tunneled in under the field with an Earth Dragon skill, and Lan, watching all of this from safety with those cold, clever eyes, spotted the disturbance on the minimap and pinged it. 1 silent marker, no explanation, trusting me to understand. I understood. I crawled into the enemy's own underground passage, followed it to its end, came up directly behind the mage, and gutted him, and blinked from the corpse straight into Fei Long's spine. And he survived. On 1 single point of health by some special trick I didn't have time to learn the name of, and then I was out of tricks entirely. 10 of the finest players of a stronger server, closing the circle, and 1 thief with nothing left in his hands. The dragon light saved me. Mei's essence flared inside me, and the numbers coming off my body turned to 0, 0, 0, invincible. The foreigners immediately started screaming the obvious thing, kill the healer, and Snow Moon threw itself bodily around Mei and got shredded for it because it didn't matter how brave they were. The enemy's gear was simply better than ours across the board. Lan and Donghai Shi, both thinking clearly, called the rational retreat, and I gave the order too. I told my own people to run and leave me because 10 aces are 10 aces, and I am, at the end of the day, 1 man. Nobody moved. Then Sister Wu stepped forward and drew a line in the dirt with the point of her greatsword. Cross it, she said to the enemy, to the whole foreign server, to the universe, and die. And every last member of 9 heavens who could still stand walked up and formed on that line. Around Mei, around the spot where their boss was making his last stand, and they refused, flatly, to leave. I need you to understand that watching people stay in a burning building for me was not a feeling I had any practice with. In my whole last life, right up to the end, nobody stayed for anybody. You ran, or you were left. That was the rule. And here was a line of misfits I'd armed with an invasion's leftovers, standing in a spell that was going to kill them for a mercenary who had just told them to save themselves. So while they held that line and bought me seconds with their lives, I opened a private message and I typed 1 number and I sent it a wild card, an offer of something generous and exciting to the 1 woman in glory who has never once been able to resist either of those 2 words. 9 heavens got wiped defending that line. All of them, one after another, and Sister Wu fell last, still facing forward, still swinging, because that is the only direction she has ever known how to face. And Mei, standing over my shoulder with 1 hit of health left and nowhere to run, finally became the thing she'd been the whole time without knowing it. Her skill fired, unity, and she came apart into a formless dragon soul and poured herself into me. Understand what that means, because the foreign aces sure didn't. As long as I am alive, she cannot be targeted. She cannot be killed. She can't move on her own anymore, but she can cast, and she pumps 30% onto every single one of my stats while she rides inside me. A hidden 15-star dragon race, the highest growth in the game, revealed at the last possible second as a shy little dragon with a whisper of horns and a tail, absolutely mortified to finally be seen by everyone at once. The girl the entire server had spent weeks laughing at, the healer who can't heal, the broken account, the dead weight, turned out to be an invincible personal goddess welded to my spine. The hunted became the hunter in the space of 1 breath. I turned around. The foreign ace nearest me put a full combo into my chest, and the numbers came up 0, 0, 0, and I watched the confidence drain out of 10 faces at the same speed. Then I killed him, and the man behind him, Blade Storm crits landing 5 and 600 a swing, and the exquisite part, the part I want you to really taste, is that the blood-red cage they'd built to trap me had a rule written into it, level unity. It would not open, would not release anyone until one side was looted all the way down to level 1. They'd built a box that only unlocks when somebody inside it is stripped to nothing, and they were locked in it, with me, invincible me. I looked around at 10 of a stronger server's finest players, penned in with an unkillable thief and a very good reason to be afraid, and I felt the specific cozy warmth of a man who has just realized his prison cell is actually a piggy bank. Oh, I said, I think I've misjudged you. You're not invaders at all. You're generous international friends, and you came all this way, at great expense, to bring me gifts. I flexed my fingers around both daggers. Please, form a line. We'll do this one at a time so nobody feels rushed. Their leader, Fei Long, watched his 10 best players turn into a gift shop and panicked, and panic makes people stupid. He got on the wider channel and ordered the foreign army still waiting outside to besiege Qingfeng City itself and spare no Chinese player. And that was the mistake that would follow Emperor of Stars into the history books. Because the deal King had made, the whole treasonous bargain, had conditions, and raising a city full of ordinary players was not one of them. King went the color of old wet paper. His face on his own stream said it before his mouth could. He'd just watched a foreign ace-stamped traitor across his forehead in ink that does not wash off ever in front of the entire country, and it did the one thing Emperor of Stars had schemed all night to prevent. It united everyone against him. Xiaohua stopped retreating and turned around. Dong Haishi, the gentlest, most conflict-averse man on the whole server, stopped retreating and said quietly that he was going to start taking this game seriously now, which is the exact sound a future ally makes the moment he decides to stop being gentle. The whole board flipped, and then my wild card finally arrived at a full sprint on all fours. The queen came galloping in like a dog late for dinner. She'd stolen a boss's pet egg some time back, and to her enormous and ongoing disgust, hatched not the fearsome direwolf she'd been promised, but a single, magnificently stupid husky. She'd also, somehow, in the time it took the rest of us to nearly die, lured a 10-meter berserk psycho-magic ape, a blue boss, across half the map by sprinting the whole way on all fours using a skill literally named Hound Walk, and then flopping down to play dead every time it got close so its aggro would slide off her and onto whatever was nearest. And she steered that entire rampaging mountain of a boss directly into the packed foreign crowd. The ape did to their remaining aces and to what was left of Sovereign roughly what a wrecking ball does to a dollhouse. Meanwhile, Lan and the Empress locked eyes across the carnage and immediately started trading insults at a speed and quality that told me, with total certainty, that these two were going to be either mortal enemies or inseparable best friends, probably both at once, and that either way, I was going to be the one paying for the comedy for a long time to come. Then I went shopping. I looted all 10 foreign aces down to their socks, 20-30 million yuan of full endgame sets pooling on the ground, and I did not sell a single piece of it. Every scrap I kept. I called my guild over, and I armed them. I handed Changjun a complete night set and watched a grown man put his face in his hands because that one drop cleared his mortgage and his kid's college fund in a single afternoon. I offered Sister Wu a warrior set and she refused it flat, arms crossed, and informed me that a real hero beats his enemies with garbage gear, or he's no hero at all, and turned right back around to keep swinging the same trash greatsword she'd walked in with. The other 7 sets I dumped into a guild contribution system for Changjun to run. And just like that, in one night, 9 Heavens went from a band of rejects nobody would group with to the single best-equipped guild in the entire country, dressed head to toe in the corpse of a foreign invasion. Emperor of Stars fled into the dark with nothing left but the promise of revenge, and I let him keep it. A grudge is only worth carrying if the other man's carrying one back at you. The next place I took my newly armored guild was a corpse-picking swamp. It's one of those beautiful traps that wipes big guilds and spares only casuals because every kill in there stacks a contagious spore parasite that erupts out of the corpse into fresh monsters and jumps from player to player across a whole group, so the better organized and tighter packed you are, the faster it eats you. 2 scammer guides tailed us in, all smiles and helpful directions, positioning themselves to loot our bodies the second we wiped. I watched them watch us, and then they watched me. Bladestorm every erupting spore cloud out of the sky one after another, while my guild, wearing an entire foreign invasion's worth of endgame gear, simply ate the first hit and shrugged and kept farming. You could see the exact moment the scammers realized nobody was going to die. It was a good moment. Then it got better. Empty Hand stole a skill mid-fight and I handed it straight to Mei Mei, and it mutated in her hands into Dragonkin Holy Word, Subjugation, which lets her peel a debuff clean off one target and fling it onto another. So she peeled the spore parasite off a monster and stuck it onto me, on purpose, because a higher level host spawns higher level spores worth triple the experience, and my guild spent the afternoon getting rich in the one corner of the map nobody else in the country could survive for 10 seconds. I'd armed them with the corpses of the last people who tried to kill me, and now I was fattening them on a trap designed to kill everyone. The sheer recursion of it, the way the game kept handing me its own weapons to turn around, made me genuinely, quietly happy in a way money never quite managed. Then Glory's own press office came calling. They wanted an interview, me and the priestess Mei Mei, because the story of one Chinese thief breaking a foreign server's invasion had gone national, front page, the whole thing. Mei Mei had logged off for dinner by then, to parents who still called her gaming a waste of a life even now that she was earning real money at it, who still made her feel like something they were stuck carrying. So I said yes to the interview, on one condition: it happens in person, at her apartment. Not for me, I don't like cameras. For her. so that the two people who had spent her entire life telling her she was nothing would have to sit in their own living room on their own couch and watch the whole country come to their door to tell her she was somebody. And that's what happened. And somewhere in the middle of it, while a reporter asked this quiet, flinching girl about the battle where she'd taken a teleport into a canyon of 200 killers to reach me, I watched Mei Mei smile. Not the nervous one she uses on strangers, the real one. The one that goes all the way up into her eyes and stays there, in front of her parents, in her own home, for the first time in her life. I have stolen divine artifacts and red-tier weapons and a dragon's soul out of a fossil. That smile was worth more than all of it, and it wasn't even close. There was one more thing I wanted before I let myself breathe, and it was a horn. A guild token, which drops off exactly one thing, a level 30 psycho-magic ape, and which you need to register a genuinely world-class guild, and which nobody on the entire server had managed to get yet. The queen lured the ape back for me because for some reason it simply refuses to drop her aggro, a strange little trait I intended to abuse thoroughly. She kited the thing on that ridiculous husky, flopping down to play dead every time it got too close, while Mei Mei stuffed the boss full of spore parasites, person-sized purple ones erupting all over its hide and chewing at that huge health bar, and I blinked around its grabs and chipped it down between spore ticks. Somewhere in the middle of the fight, I recruited the Empress into 9 heavens and watched her tank a hit from a boss by crouching into a set of invincibility frames that most players in the world don't even know exist yet, and I understood, all over again, that this barefoot arithmetic disaster was a top-tier talent that history had simply forgotten to write down. The ape came apart. It dropped the horn, a greatsword, an antique ring that curses your experience gain in exchange for a monstrous alchemy bonus, exactly the kind of poisoned gift I love, and a skill that mutated in my hands into eagle-eye vision, which paints an enemy's weak points in red and murmurs me the value of everything it's carrying like a fence appraising a mark. The first thing I did was look at Mei Mei through it, riding invincible on my back, and she showed no weak point at all. Not one. Of course she didn't. So I walked into the admin hall and registered 9 heavens as the first world-class guild in existence. Guild leader clicked into place under my ID, and the game rewarded the world first with a free blue-tier territory and a starter pack, a head start most guilds would happily bankrupt themselves to buy, because territories are money pits that eat resources every single day, and I found the exploit inside it before I'd finished reading the tooltip. A brand new territory prices its upgrade hearts at 10 experience apiece, where an established guild pays tens of thousands. So I deliberately overbuilt the place to spike its own daily upkeep into the red, farmed the territory's experience off its own deficit, and spent that experience buying hearts for pennies on the yuan, rushing my little village up toward purple on a loop that fed itself. My people fell completely in love with farming their own home, the specific way you love a thing that is, for once, actually yours. I made Mei Mei and the Empress and Chang Jun and Sister Wu my admins. And then I turned in the next step of the SSS quest and completed the full 6-piece heritage leather armor set at last and braced for a nice clean power spike. I got the power spike. I also got a mystery I did not order. The completed set came with a faint ancient bloodstain effect that read, on the tooltip, as purely cosmetic. Flavor text. Right up until the Empress's idiot husky caught the scent of that old blood and lost its entire mind. Hackles up. Backing away growling, terrified out of its fur by a suit of leather armor. Take one piece off, and the dog calmed down. Put it back on, and it panicked again. Something was sleeping in the thing I'd been wearing on my own skin since level 10, and it had a smell, and the smell scared animals. I didn't know what it was yet, but the darkness at the bottom of this world had just lifted its head and sniffed back at me, and I was beginning to understand a rule of glory that no tooltip will ever tell you. In this game, the gear wears you too. My sister left for university that week. She stuck notes all over the apartment, frozen dumplings in the top drawer, I'll cook this weekend, don't live on instant noodles, and then she was gone, and I sat alone in the quiet planning the day I'd finally tell her the truth about the company I don't have and the world that's coming. Then I put on the antique ring, which halves my experience gains as a curse and, as a blessing, hands an alchemist a 300% success rate, and I signed a run of rare potions with my own name and bundle sold them at roughly 120 times cost, because I was the only alchemist in the world, and monopolies priced themselves, 500,000 yuan of profit in an afternoon. My bank account crept up toward 9 million, close enough to reach out and touch the villa. Then I went back to the Twilight Forest, and the Twilight Forest started whispering. Eagle-eye vision cut the fog like a knife. There were mist wolves in there, level 15, immune to half of all damage, so I read their weak points and killed them blind, throwing daggers backward and blinking, and I won over a squad of Qingfeng City soldiers on a quest along the way. Deep in the trees, I found a seal, an old one, the kind of thing that had just been scenery in my last life, and cracking it wanted 100 mistwolf crystal cores. So I farmed cores, and my cores started vanishing. One at a time, silently, out of a sealed inventory, even inside the safety of the main city, eaten by something eagle-eye vision couldn't see. 1. Went looking for my old thief mentor to ask what could possibly steal from the thief who steals from everyone. But first there was a debt to collect, and it had been aging beautifully in the barrel this whole time. You remember the green tea girl, my sister's friend, who'd announced at that fancy lunch that she was Crimson Dragonstone Blade's secret girlfriend, held hands, hugged, kissed, the whole invented romance, directly across the table from the actual man without knowing it. Well, she'd been busy. She'd found herself a mark in game, a playboy priest calling himself something breezy about wind and moonlight, who was courting her with a signed pearl jade potion and a lot of loud bragging about his fake connections to my guild. She used him for his skills and let him think he was winning. 2 liars, circling each other, both certain they were the shark. It was almost sweet. Then the trap sprang itself, which is the best kind. My sister's other friend, the sweet clueless one who has never told a lie in her life because it wouldn't occur to her, asked a couple of perfectly innocent questions out loud, in the group chat, on stream, in front of everyone. When did you meet him? What's his real ID? Show us the messages. And the green tea girl's whole beautiful timeline folded up like a cheap chair because you cannot answer simple questions about a boyfriend you invented. So I stepped in, hooded, in-game, in front of the crowd she'd been performing for. I walked up and took her hand, the exact gesture of a man about to punish an imposter for using his name. And instead of flinching, she melted. She thought her invented boyfriend had come to her rescue, live, in front of everyone who doubted her, and she leaned in for the kiss she'd been telling people about for weeks. I pulled the hood back. And I was both. I was Crimson Dragonstone Blade, the man she'd claimed had kissed her. And I was also the big brother of the friend she'd spent that whole lunch mocking, the quiet guy who'd been sitting directly across the table the entire time, listening to every word. You could watch the 2 truths arrive in her face and collide, and then you could watch the social death travel through her like a wave hitting a beach. The playboy priest, realizing in real time that he had spent a week trying to poach the girlfriend of the single most dangerous man on the server, logged off and fled the zone at a speed I genuinely respected. My sister took a little friendly fire damage because her in-game ID, I should mention, is Big Brother's A-Clown, and it was hard for her to hold the moral high ground with that floating over her head. And then I recruited all 3 of them into 9 heavens on the spot, the sweet one, the mocked sister, and the freshly annihilated liar, because the best possible revenge on someone who lied about your name is a good salary, a great guild, and a permanent front row seat to watch you be exactly who you said you were. My thief mentor took one look at the vanishing cores problem and told me it was above her pay grade and sent me to see a priest mentor about my head, which was rude and also, in hindsight, fair. So I went at the mystery from the other end entirely, the sealed basement under Scarlet Monastery, the one the smiling priest kept lying about, and I didn't go myself. I sent my sister's bionic tear clone down to probe it, because a clone can die as many times as it needs to, freely, where a real person only gets the once. The clone died, and it came back up the stairs carrying a lump of black, congealed, ancient blood, and in the light of the hall the blood uncurled itself into a woman, a sealed one. The Element Empress of Ixtal, ruler of a kingdom the game says was scoured off the map more than 1,000 years ago. Brown-skinned and white-haired with a great ringed hoop for a weapon and an aura on her that made my skin crawl through a screen. An elder power, ancient and furious and chained. And my 19-year-old sister driving the clone, entirely unbothered because, it's just a game, Gege, I'll respawn. Walked straight up to this sealed elder god and slapped her across the face and started bossing her around like a substitute teacher who's had enough. I have never, in either of my lives, laughed so hard and so quietly. Under the cover of that magnificent disrespect, Empty Hand went to work, and I stole the Element Empress's command, an orange key item that unlocks the Ixtal Ruins dungeon at level 18. The Empress started ripping loose of her chains at the insult. My sister dissolved the clone with a cheerful, "Okay, bye," and we left. I filed the Empress in the drawer with the priest and the Bone Cathedral. The drawer labeled things that are going to get much, much worse before they get better. Then the vanishing cores solved themselves, and I wish, honestly, that they hadn't. It was the armor. It had always been the armor. The heritage leather armor. The 6-piece set the SSS quest had been feeding me one gift at a time since level 10. The beautiful unbound set with the little ancient bloodstain in the flavor text had been quietly drinking my Mistwolf crystal cores out of a sealed inventory this entire time. I tested it. Take one piece off. The eating stopped. Put it back on. Cores started vanishing again. The Queen's Husky had never been afraid of a suit of leather. It had been afraid of the thing drinking through it. And there was exactly one way left to find out what that thing was, which was to walk deeper into the Twilight Forest than any sane player goes across the Great Seal, wearing it. The inner ring answered me with birds. Shadow birds, level 15, each one tiny and fast and lethal on its own, and the instant I crossed the seal, a swarm of them, tens of thousands strong, came awake all at once, filling the air like black smoke with teeth, which is just the pretty way of writing certain death. I planted my feet in the full heritage set with nowhere to run and nothing that could kill this many things. And the set answered. The bloodstain wasn't a stain, it was a man. An ancient assassin had been sleeping inside my armor since level 10, a legendary four-fingered killer named Kale, and my crystal cores had been the meal slowly waking him this whole time. He unfolded up out of my own gear like a shadow standing off a wall, and he saved my life with 2 moves and no wasted motion. First, he stole the distance itself, 100 meters simply gone between one blink and the next, faster and further than my blink could dream. And then he reached out toward the swarm and stole the life force out of all of it at once, and tens of thousands of birds withered in the air and dropped all together like the whole forest had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. That, he told me, without words, is what an assassin actually is. Not a knife, a mind. You do not outfight a swarm. You find the one thing that lets it live, and you take that, and the fight is already over. The SSS quest turned its page. A new chapter opened. Investigate the bloodline of the stealth. Find Kale's ancient assassin organization, learn what became of it, and wake him the rest of the way by speaking his name aloud. Kale, and the ocean of life force he just torn out of the sky, he didn't keep a drop of it. He poured all of it into the dragon essence, that crippled little soul asleep in my bag, and told me to take good care of her. There would be a surprise. And the essence stirred for the first time since the spider's web, fed at last after 1,000 years of starving inside a fossil, and I felt it begin to change shape in the dark of my pack, becoming slowly something with a future. I was collecting a whole family of sleeping monsters now, one locked drawer at a time, and I was beginning to suspect, with a cold feeling I didn't have a name for, that every one of them was a piece of the same enormous broken thing, and Twilight Quest paid out past 100%. The NPC Arthur handed me 20,000 herbs and a city reputation bump, and my guild kept quietly getting richer off the invasion loot. And then the Empress dragged me to a dungeon she was very excited about, which should have been my first warning. It was a 2-player co-op dungeon behind a rainbow gate under a waterfall, and it had a reputation. It's the Trust Dungeon. The one where the puzzles run on cooperation instead of stats, where your gear means nothing and your read on your partner means everything. The one where they say couples go in and don't come out together. And the instant we stepped through, the game turned us both into children. 7 years old, small hands, a whole trial built out of the shape of a childhood, greeted by a kindly old woodcutter who called us village kids. It's a memory. You climb through it. Stage 1 was a cliff. No footholds. So I put footholds there, firing arrows into the rock face for the Empress to climb, and when a hidden staircase turned out to be a trap, I read it early, loosed a 3-arrow volley that collapsed the whole false stairway before it could drop us, and slipped in one delayed first shot, an arrow fired seconds early to arrive exactly when the ambush boss did, and blinded on arrival. A pangolin the size of a bus, dealt with by an arrow I'd let go before I could even see it. The dungeon flashed a 10-star record. The Queen looked at me climbing beside her, and for the first time since I'd met her said nothing sarcastic at all. Stage 2 was a giant bear and a lot of trees, and the trick was to whip-pull the trees down onto it in rhythm, which required perfect timing between 2 people, so I cut each trunk the same way, shallow, 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 1 deep, so the fall was identical every time and the Empress could set her watch by it. She stopped bracing for my failure. She just moved, trusting the tree would come down exactly when I said it would, and it did, every time, another 10 stars. Stage 3 was a kitchen, and this is where the game got its joke in. A cooking banquet, skill for skill, and it turned out the arrogant god king of darkness is a genuinely deft, careful cook who feeds people, and the terrifying top thief of the server cannot chop an onion without endangering nearby civilians. She laughed at me, not the sharp laugh, a real one. And somewhere around a running score of 20 stars, heading for a 30 nobody had ever hit, the mask came all the way off. Under the Chuni Act and the ridiculous name, the Empress was an eldest sister who cooks every single day for 2 younger brothers and a younger sister, who wears the armor of arrogance because somebody in her house has to be the strong one. She told me she felt, next to me, a strange kind of safe, and I stood in a make-believe kitchen as a 7-year-old and missed my best friend from a life that hadn't happened yet, the partner whose ID doesn't exist in this world, and thought, not for the first time, that being reborn is the loneliest kind of lucky there is. We hit 30 stars. Nobody had ever hit 30 stars. The Queen got a pair of orange greaves off a cult called the Black Moon, which I filed next to Kyle, and I drew the thing that changed my whole timeline. A red artifact, Devourer's Prayer, an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail, 2 powers, Tail Eater's Luck, a random burst of extreme fortune, and Tail Eater's Restart, which rewinds time by devouring one of your items, and the second I read that skill, I felt the future turn over in its sleep, because a thing that rewinds time is going to be either salvation or a loaded gun once this game is real. The sky screamed a red artifact announcement to the world, the first one ever, and a foreign server that had already lost an invasion to me got to read it and despair on schedule. I turned professional after that. Dungeon carries 300,000 a client, and my first was Xiaohua, whom I drill sergeanted through a climbing puzzle live on her own guild stream, narrating her weakness and her pitifulness and her helplessness to a few million viewers until weak, pitiful, helpless president was a meme with her face on it. 13 more clients that day, 4.2 million yuan before dinner. My reputation finished its evolution into makes bank and humiliates you while he does it. Then I spent almost all of it on a house. The lakeside villa at Qingshan, a boat access place worth around 10 million, on land where a lost elite army spawns when the world turns real, and I reserved the neighboring townhouses too, because when everything ends, I intend to end it behind a wall of my own. My sister changed her job to warrior, atypical and perfect, and I bought her a mount, and then I went back to milk the Element Empress one more time. I dressed my sister's clone up as the priest to bait the Empress, even faked his holy aura and stole an orange Ixtal key item off her, but this time the priest opened his eyes and watched me do it, and I finally understood the shape of him. He isn't the Empress's jailer. He's her accomplice. He wants her to break her seal. His report that everything was normal at Scarlet Monastery wasn't a lazy lie. It was a deliberate one, and every time I milked the Empress, I was loosening the very seal he was pretending to guard. The gentlest NPC on the server had been using me and smiling while he did it, another name for the drawer. The dragon essence woke up while I wasn't looking. Kale's stolen life force had finished feeding it, and one day in the poison swamp, the little soul in my bag let out a pressure, a dragon's pressure, and every monster in a berserk dungeon that had spent a lifetime tormenting it, the spiders and the shrimp and the crab that had once drained it dry, simply froze, paralyzed, remembering an old fear. So I farmed the dungeon that had killed me for fat experience, pinned the elite shrimp under my own dragon's weight, and soloed the crab by blinking so its 5,000 point venom landed on itself. And in the loot I found Padding Step, a rare thing, an upgradable skill. One empty hand can steal the skill book of over and over to level up, the kind of skill that in my last life, a man called the Sword Immortal leveled into a single horizontal slash that beat all of China. I put that away too, gently, next to the dragon and the assassin and the empress, and kept climbing toward level 18, and the door it would open. Padding Step 1 leveled to 100, then past 100, which almost nobody does, up to 142, where it unlocked a second effect that shaved damage off every dodge, so now a leather thief could eat hits that killed knights. I hit 15. I carried Snowmoon through the berserk swamp on the back of my paralyzing dragon, one-shotting monsters that had been walls, and Xiaohua, who grinds 14 hours a day trying to close a gap that only gets wider, went quietly and completely humbled. A new faction turned up too, an Eagle Clan scout, silver hair, lake blue eyes, the kind of elite mobile force that shouldn't appear anywhere near a starter zone, drawn here by whatever anomaly my dragon was radiating, and my dragon essence took one look at her and trembled in its bag like a dog that's just seen the vet. I added it to the list of things I didn't understand yet. The list was getting long. Then the game handed me a mission that was, in the most literal sense possible, my own rap sheet, printed out and posted on the wall. An S-rank joint mission, and S-rank means the whole world hears about it, put up by 4 separate powers at once, the kingdom and the military and the church and the Eagle Clan, all 4 begging in unison for a hero brave enough to investigate the strange disasters plaguing the region. 4 branches to the quest, and I read them one after another and felt the floor tilt. Branch 1, the riot in the poison swamp, which I caused by stealing a dragon's soul out of a fossil. Branch 2, the mass death in the twilight forest, which was Kale, waking up inside my own armor. Branch 3, the spreading corruption at Scarlet Monastery, which was the sealed element Empress that I personally kept sneaking back to rob. And Branch 4, the foreign infiltration near Qingfeng City, which was, of course, the cross-server invasion I'd broken with my bare hands a few days ago. 4 kingdoms, mobilizing their absolute finest, pooling their power into one legendary mission to hunt down and bring to justice a single catastrophic culprit who was, in all 4 cases, without exception, me. I want to tell you, it feels a specific way to stand in a crowd and read a wanted poster and slowly recognize the sketch as your own face. It's not guilt, exactly. It's closer to the feeling of being the only person at a funeral who knows where the body's buried and being asked to give the eulogy. Nobody could even accept the thing. It was reputation gated so high that even Xiaohua, with all her family money and grinding, got bounced at the door. So I did the sensible thing and tried to slip quietly out of the whole spotlight, and my leaving backfired in the most glory way imaginable. The NPCs read my retreat as noble restraint. What a serious man, they murmured. What admirable focus, taking his responsibilities one at a time instead of grandstanding. And they trusted me more for it and cornered me into publicly accepting Branch 2, the Twilight Forest, in a world announcement I had no way to dodge. So I took it. I shared it with 9 heavens and nobody else to keep the rewards in the family, and I marched 300 kingdom soldiers under a captain named Arthur and 100 of my own people, straight back into the trees where an ancient assassin lived in my coat. The bridge out was conveniently broken, which funneled 300 soldiers and 100 of my people into a single narrow canyon, which is exactly where the ambush was waiting, because someone had planned this a long way back. Hooded assassins with stats that read as pure question marks even through eagle-eye vision, corpses that vanished the instant they fell without leaving so much as a copper coin, the same erased from the record signature as Kale's ancient order. They rolled boulders down the canyon walls onto a column of men who had nowhere on earth to go. We lost a third of 9 heavens and a great many soldiers in the first few minutes, and there was nothing clever to be done about a rock. So I did the only thing left. I scaled the canyon wall alone, hand over hand, blinking the gaps, and I got up among the invisible hands that were pushing the boulders, and I blade stormed them off the cliff, and I saved the rest of the column. And when it was over, when the dust settled and the survivors were counting themselves, I looked down into the valley and saw Arthur on his knees in the dirt. He was grieving, and I don't mean a cutscene. I don't mean a scripted little sad face on a loop. I mean a man on his knees among his dead soldiers, men he'd known, and it was in his shoulders, and it was real. And I understood, all the way down, the one thing about this game that only a man who's already watched the world end can truly understand. These are not monsters and mannequins. In a few short years, every single one of these NPCs is going to wake up as a real person, breathing real air, on the far side of a screen that's about to break. The ones dying in this canyon were already dying like people. They'd just never been told. Mei Mei went and knelt down in the dirt beside Arthur and grieved with him. Not performing it. Feeling it. This girl who has spent her entire life being treated like she doesn't count, kneeling to mourn soldiers a system had labeled as scenery, because she of all people knows exactly what it costs to be told you don't matter. I stood over the two of them and I told her, quietly, that her heart was the best thing about her, and that I meant it, and that I would spend whatever it took to keep it from getting broken. We fell back to my guild territory, and the villagers came out to greet their lord and laid a feast, warm windows and full tables in a place I'd built out of an exploit and a head start. And Arthur, wiping his face, told me a piece of news that changed the size of my whole plan. The kingdom was going to raise a fortress city near Qingfeng, a third great point on the map to stand beside the capital cities. And a territory as well run as mine, he said, with a crown's backing, could become that citadel. My little farming village, the one my people fell in love with, a capital, with walls, right where I was going to need walls most. I told him I'd think about it, which is the thing I say when I've already decided and I don't want anyone to see how fast. Day 2 in the forest, the assassin order had turned the whole place into a trap, and they caught me with something called black bone poison. Purple, 300 a second, and undispellable. Even Mei Mei's subjugation couldn't peel it off. It should have killed me. Instead, my poison mastery did what it does, took the poison apart from the inside, read its recipe, and handed me both an immunity and the skill itself. Which mattered, because black bone poison does fixed damage plus a percentage of a target's max health, which is precisely the answer to the unkillable million health monsters this game keeps throwing at me. Their leader was a blind woman, blindfolded, who nearly deleted me with a single 700 damage strike out of nowhere, 3 moves from killing me one-on-one. Unable to break 109 heavens head-on, she did the unthinkable and shattered the Great Seal to weaponize whatever was behind it. What was behind the seal was a rune giant, a blue colossus at level 28, and here was its trick. Every time you heard it, it levels up. 28 to 30 to 32 to 34, growing stronger off your own damage, so the harder you hit it, the further out of reach it climbs. You cannot outlevel a thing that feeds on being fought. Arthur's whole army couldn't scratch it, but you don't outlevel it, you rot it. Black bone poison eats a fixed number plus a percentage of a target's max health every tick, no matter how high the target climbs, so I set the poison in it and let Arthur tank and the Empress kite, and the giant grew and drowned anyway, and came down and dropped the world's second guild token. And far off in the trees, I caught a glimpse of another living shadow, one of Kale's own kind, already at war with the blind woman's order, sinking the other lost ancient poison into her, the mirror of the one I carried. There were pieces of this moving that had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with me all at once. The fog lifted, the first branch of the quest closed, my whole guild leveled off the rewards, and a carrier pigeon dropped in with the second branch. Find the source of the mist, which was Kale, which was me. It is always, in the end, me. The source was Kale's shadow, a purple thing at level 30 with several times the rune giant's health, and I found it already half dead from fighting the order, and I tried to snipe the kill with black bone poison, and it drank my poison and healed to 50%, because naturally the one creature in this entire world immune to the poison I'd just learned was the one I needed to kill with it. So I did it the thief's way instead. I conned the blind leader of the order, posed as a mysterious quest-giving stranger, flashed my red artifact as bait, wrung the lore I needed out of her mouth, and then physically hurled her at Kale's shadow and ran, sealing the two of them together in a cave maze behind me to fight it out. And the instant I'd stood in front of Kale's people and spoken his name aloud, the SSS chapter, Investigate the Bloodline of the Stealth, completed. The reward was Kale's blood, orange, a substance that forges divine power onto any gear tough enough to survive it, and my heritage armor, already soaked in his old blood, was the only gear in the world tough enough. And in the running, out of breath, it finally landed on me, the thing I should have seen a dozen clues ago. The order's name came through the chat auto-censored, scrambled into a wall of question marks, the exact same way Kale's true name does. The blind woman had treated her own dead comrades like nothing, abandoned them mid-sentence, and told me flatly that in this world, only people like me actually die, like a player talking about NPCs, because that is what she is, not a woman from Earth. A player from another world entirely. Glory is not Earth's game with Earth's people inside it. It's a door, and other worlds are pouring their own champions through it too. Whole civilizations of them, playing the same board from the far side, and the assassins erasing soldiers in my forest were just another server's raid team farming a zone. I had spent this entire second life smug, certain, treating the whole thing like a story I'd already read the ending of, and I stood there in the trees with my heart going and understood that I did not know the ending. I had never even seen the real board. I'd been playing checkers on one corner of something the size of a sky. I took Kale's blood to my guild's forge, and the forge exploded, and out of the wreck came a blood fusion furnace, orange, which upgraded my whole smithy, and better, upgraded my entire heritage set from green all the way to blue rare, a power jump I could feel in every stat. I sold the world's second guild token to Xiaohua for 26.5 million yuan, which finally, formally, allied Snowmoon to me. I bought a Porsche in the real world, because why not? And I learned one thing that turned my stomach for reasons that had nothing to do with money. The Empress's real-world address sits exactly where a Spider Queen's nest spawns when glory turns real. That's why I'd never heard of her in my last life. She dies there, at the very start, before she ever gets to become the legend she should have been. I can't save everyone from what's coming. I decided, standing there, that I was going to save her. Then I hit level 18, which unlocked the Ixtal ruins, and my red artifact chose that exact moment to fire its jackpot. Tail Eater's luck. 10 times experience, 50 times drop rate, a rain of skill books and gold. I stood in the downpour grinning like an idiot. And then, quietly, at the edges, a black aura began to curl up around my ankles, and the snake that eats its own tail collected the other half of what it's owed. The other half was a curse. Extreme luck, the Ouroboros decided, has to be paid for with extreme bad luck, because a snake that eats its own tail is really just a very old word for fair. So now my skills failed to land, my footing gave out on flat ground, rocks fell on me from clear sky, which was hilarious timing because level 18 had opened the Ixtal ruins, and the Ixtal ruins had opened to the entire world. This was the big one. A global competitive instance, 10 slots for China, 3 to 5 for every rival nation, and the winning region walks away with real buffs stamped across its map, which turned a dungeon into a war between servers with a whole planet watching. I took 10 in, 9 heavens and Xiaohua's Snowmoon together, and the dungeon fought dirty, slipping inner demon doppelgangers into the party, a fake Xiaohua among the real faces, and I fought all of it while cursed. A version of me that couldn't rely on a single dice roll going his way, tripping into disasters, dropped by flukes. So I did the only thing you can do with bad luck, which is aim it, turn every pratfall into a trap, every accident into somebody else's problem, and let my guild carry the boss while their leader looked, for once, mortal. It was not my finest hour, and I'm not going to pretend it was, but it got us to the top of the ruins, and at the top of the ruins was the only thing that actually mattered. Ixtal Peak, the summit. Whoever occupied it held it for their entire region, the single greatest prize the dungeon had, and the whole rest of the world had already agreed on one thing, which was that China could not be allowed to have it. 47 of them. Every rival nation's best players, who spent the whole dungeon hating each other, had put it all aside for one shared dream, which was to gang up and take the summit off the 10 of us. 10 versus 47, live streamed to the planet, and their timing was perfect because their intel was good, and their intel said Crimson Dragonstone Blade was cursed and couldn't fight, which was true. I was hiding behind Sister Wu's greatsword like a man half my level, tripping over my own bad luck, and 47 foreigners smelled blood in the water and came for the kill. The queen didn't wait to be saved. While the front line held and I stumbled, she slipped out sideways with her stupid husky, sent the dog one way as a decoy, and went the other, alone, all the way around behind the enemy to the portal they were spawning reinforcements through, and she broke it. She stood at the enemy's own front door and destroyed the thing, feeding 47 players fresh bodies, and cut their tide off at the source. One woman, no backup, on a suicide run nobody asked her to make. It was the single most important move of the entire battle, and it was hers. Then she walked to the edge of the cliff. She could have run. She'd done the impossible, and she could have tried to slip home. She didn't. She turned around, this ridiculous, arrogant, tender girl who cooks for her little brothers and can't count on her fingers, and she looked at the enemy she'd just gutted, and she smiled that smile, and she said, "A queen should die in a way appropriate for a queen." And she stepped off the cliff. I want to tell you I said something. I didn't. There wasn't time, and there weren't words. The whole China region watched a healer's decoy and an assassin's sacrifice buy us the summit, and the live stream chat, tens of millions of strangers, filled top to bottom with one name, over and over, mine, Crimson Dragonstone Blade, because that's the only prayer a crowd knows how to say when it's watching something it can't do anything about. She'd spent the whole dungeon being underestimated. She died being the reason we won. And I stood there, cursed and useless, and felt the last thing snap into place that I'd been missing since I woke up 18 again, in a life I already ruined once. I reached into my bag and I took out the red artifact and I used the half of it I'd been saving. Reboot of the Tail Eater. It rewinds time, and it pays for it by eating your things, so I let it eat everything. My heritage leather armor, the 6-piece set the SSS quest had fed me since level 10, the one with Kale sleeping in it, crumbled to dust off my body. My twin cataclysm fangs, the daggers that had been in my hands since the very first boss, turned to sand and poured off my fingers. My levels rolled backward. Every scrap of power I'd built for 18 levels burned to fuel one turn of the wheel, and I let it because the curse burned with it. The black aura tore loose and reversed, and the system chimed one more time. Bad luck complete, now converting to a buff of extreme fortune. 4 minutes, 25 seconds. I traded everything I owned to become, for 4.5 minutes, the luckiest creature that has ever existed. The last time I felt this was in an angel's white room on the first night of my second life. I'd come all the way around the snake to the head again. Mei Mei saw my empty gear slots and panicked. All of China saw my name drop off the equipment rankings and thought I was finished. The foreigners saw a stripped, weaponless, low-level man standing alone on the mountain and started laughing because their intel was still good. It was just 20 seconds out of date. Lin Horan lost everything. Kill him now. Take back the peak. I picked up a tree branch. There was frost on it, this high in the early spring, and I shook the water off and I walked out to meet 47 people with a stick. Their skills came down on me in a wave of light and fire, and every single one read, miss. Extreme fortune on top of the highest evasion in the game meant the concept of hitting me had simply stopped being available to them. A knight charged, one man and a burning warhorse, screaming that the king of the China region should kneel. I kicked him off his horse and I took my branch and I pinned his calf to the mountain with it, and he did not get up, and I told him since he liked making people kneel so much that I'd grant his wish, and left him there on his knees facing our flag. Then the luck showed me its teeth. Every foreigner I put down dropped most of their gear, right there on the mountain, real money endgame sets spilling out onto the rock. And 47 people who had come here to strip me watched each other start bleeding treasure and did the math, and the united alliance of the entire world turned its weapons on itself, everyone killing everyone else to make sure they weren't the one who died to my hand and lost their life savings. I'd walked in with a branch and they were murdering their own allies to get away from me. One of them, dying, asked me why. Why, when all they wanted was a share, when China had taken the peak and they were only playing by the same rules. Why, I said. No reason. I have the biggest fist, so I make the rules. What China gives you, you can take. What China doesn't give you, you can't. That's all it is. I saved the branch for the loud ones and Bladestorm for the rest, and when the light cleared, Ixtal Peak was empty of everything but scattered gear and a very cold wind. The capture meter climbed. 90%, 95, 100. Congratulations to the players of the China region for conquering Ixtal Peak. 3 times, to the whole world. We'd held. We'd won. Every blessed land and hidden grotto in the ruins teleported home to sit on my guild's doorstep, and a planet that had spent all night waiting to watch China lose watched it take the summit instead. I stuck the branch upright in the soil at my feet. I looked up at the sky, where a girl had stepped off a cliff a few minutes and a whole lifetime ago, and I let myself breathe. Queen, I said, to no one, to the wind. I brought you the Ixtal Peak I promised you. Here's where I started. Reborn into a body I'd already failed, broke, forging my little sister's tuition into a video game helmet, hiding behind a stolen name because my own hadn't been worth anything the first time around. And here's where I ended up, that night, standing on the roof of the world with empty hands, having traded every ounce of power I owned for a stick and a promise, holding a mountain for a few million strangers who only knew me by a name I made up. I logged off. I was exhausted in the specific, complete way you only get from a life that finally means something. I set my helmet on its charging tray the way I always do, careful, square, and I went to sleep. I did not see the light. In the dark of my room, on the desk beside the helmet, a soft gold glow gathered out of nothing, dot by dot, and folded itself into the shape of a rolled parchment scroll. The mysterious scroll, the one that lives inside the game, that had never once been anywhere but inside the game. It sat on my desk in the real world, in the dark, patient, like it had always been there, like it had always been waiting. The game was starting to reach through, and of all 8 billion people it could have reached for first, it had reached for me. But some things you save for the next time you tell the story.